The situation is entitled The Final Battle. Jonathan, my boss accepted my recent resignation and he wants to do an exit interview. And obviously, exit interviews are for understanding what went wrong and how can I manage moving forward. So the person says, I quit because of his leadership style, but I cannot afford to have a discussion about this. And I can understand. It's going to be a 1 hour painful discussion of who was wrong, who was right, why don't I like you, what happened, etc. I get where you're coming from. And so the person says, I know it will be messy. How should I go about the discussion, right? The phrasing of this question is quite tricky because you're not directly asking me if I should tell the truth or should I just say something else to make the conversation quicker. And that's how I'm going to be answering this question. So this kind of conflict has options, all right? And before I give those options, could I please type in the chat box, do you agree with the popular quote? This was a quote by the Gallup poll in 2011. It was one of the landmark studies. Thousands and thousands of participants all around the world were asked the question, what was the last reason why you quit your job? And in many situations, people leave their bosses, not their jobs. A lot of them believe that they can find ways to improve how they see their work. But if it's about a person that they can't get along with 8 hours a day, it drives them nuts and pushes them to hand over the resignation. Do you agree? I so agree with this. I so agree with this. I will say the same thing for clients as well. Sometimes I don't refuse a speaking engagement. Sometimes I refuse a client who imposes everything down to how I should wear or down to how the design of my slides would be. And sometimes I would tell to the client, well, if you just want me to say what you want to say, then get a robot and let the person speak. Otherwise, there's no point getting a speaker if it's not coming from what he also believes in and from his own studies. I'm talking about research already in this case. So here is a suggestion for this person. You got two options. Option number one, you can help that leader you're quitting become a better leader by telling the truth, which means you consider the pain in that 2 hour or 1 hour conversation as, all right, pain is a function of time. It's going to be a really hell conversation, but I'm going to do it because if I don't say it to him, he can repeat it again to someone else. Can I get an exclamation mark? Right? So there are further nuances to this. Point number one, you have to consider if you want to tell everything down to the truth, how much power does this person have in the industry such that no matter how you want what's best for you and for the person may say something bad about you and the person can poison your reputation in the industry. So consider that. You might want to mince your words. You might want to pedal back, right? Versus being honest as if you're vomiting for the first time all your issues with this leader, right? In all of the bosses that I left, especially the managers that I had to quit because of their personality, I did not tell 100% all of my feelings, but I did make sure that they understood that one of the triggers of why I left was because of how I was being managed. And I had to choose the reasons that I knew were reasonable. And I wanted that leader to become a better leader because I knew that this was something that he or she is going to repeat again. Remember, guys, managers are managers, but managers are just humans who also need a lot of space of improvement. So sometimes we owe it to them that I care for you. I learned something from you. I didn't like what happened between the two of us, but if you're going to have 10 more people under your belt in the next 20 years, I feel for those 20 people. And I feel it as my ethical responsibility that these are the things that need to be changed or need to be considered at least. Right? Yes, I'm reading your messages now. Irish Santos says, I spent 4 hours doing that with my previous manager. Ooh, that's an example of how painful it is. Jabby says need to be passive aggressive at one point and not aggressive to soften the blow. And that's right. So your choice of words matter here, right? So one example is that when you point out one issue about your manager, my formula is this. When you do X, I feel Y. And when I feel Y, I end up becoming Z. Can I get an exclamation mark if you see the structure there? And in this way, you give your reasons by citing evidence, citing anecdotes, and how can you connect that that thing that your boss did made you feel this way? I'll give an example. When I do my PowerPoint presentations in front of the management, and when you interrupt and butt in, I feel that you are taking away the power for me to be able to express, given that I was the one leading the project. And when you do that, I feel uninspired because I feel that I will not be able to progress because I'm not empowered also to make decisions on my own. That's one example. So I pinpoint one specific, and I have to highlight this. When you give some issues about your boss, you have to give them evidence because otherwise they will not be able to believe that you have a reason for feeling such. Okay? Oh, I like this sentence from Tin Constantino. Thank you for raising this. Pinpoint the act, not the character. Thank you for raising that. Similarly, there's a difference between observing and judging, right? Observing is stating the facts. When you do this, here's what happens. Here's how I feel, right? And sometimes, the messenger, the boss is not the messenger in this case. The boss is the decision maker, right? But you can say that you can pinpoint the act. The act is being called out, and you know that the act can be eliminated by the person because you have faith that the person can do better. Okay. Okay. Then even adds, treat it like feedback giving, be specific, objective, and directed to the act. Okay. Here's number 2 option. So a while ago, confronting. Number 2, if you think, and here's where I want to call it out. Sometimes you have to choose your battles. Sometimes the benefit of that leader changing comes at a very big cost that it can even traumatize you. I mean, if you have a 5-hour conversation with someone, I don't want you to remember that conversation for the rest of your life to the point that it will haunt you and change how you get inspired with work. I don't want you to feel that way. So this is where you have to really, strike the balance. If you feel that it's going to be a traumatizing because you already know how the conversation might go, then here's where, okay, I'm going to give you the ticket and I'm going to give you the license to keep it short. And one way to keep a conversation short without you being questioned or without you being claimed that you are lying is focus on the positive reasons for leaving. It is undeniable that a manager will question your reasons for leaving. If your issue is, I'm leaving because I saw greener pasture, another company is giving me an opportunity with a higher salary and a role that I think I will learn more versus what I'm doing right now.